podcast about comics. A podcast about comics.
Welcome back to another episode of a podcast about comics. This is your boy Tchallabp74, back on location with my man, Mr. Mark Spector, aka Moon Knight himself. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
What's up? Between the Panels here. Chris Burdett, just hanging out. Welcome to have you back.
Thank you so much for being here, man. We're going to have a great episode about Moon Knight. We're going to jump into the character. We're going to talk a little bit about the trailer. We're going to talk a little bit about characters. We're going to talk about some old Moon Knight comics. We're going to talk about some paraphernalia of Moon Knight. And we're going to just have a good time. So strap on in. Let's ride. All right, so how you feel about that trailer? First of all, how do you feel that we finally getting Moon Knight?
Oh my God, you have no idea. You have no idea, man. Like, seriously, one of the characters I've loved since I was a kid. Always just been enamored with the character. I remember getting a card back in the day, because I'm not only a comic book collector, but a trading card collector. And I actually have the card. If you want to grab the card, it's right there. I know you're going to have to get up. So that little card right there, back in the day, is what started everything off.
Okay.
I pulled that from A.P.A.C, and I was like, who is this character? I know nothing about this character. At the time, I'm all about X-Men, I'm all about Spider-Man, I'm all about the cliches in Marvel, and I'm like, this little white guy wearing this hooded cloak, I'm reading it, I'm looking at the back of it, I was like, okay, he has strength and he's resurrected by an Egyptian god, and immediately at the time, it was during the 90s, Egyptian lore was all a thing, and I was like, I need to know more about this character.
And you was, that time, what age?
Well, this came out in 1993.
Okay.
And it's going to show my age.
Yeah, it is.
So I was, at that time, I was 7 or 8 years old, if I do the
10.
math correct.
Less than 10, yeah.
So Moon Knight at the time, if you think about it, it's a pretty brutal character to give an 8-year-old, but
yeah.
I was also reading Punisher and other things at the time, so at the same time, I was like, you know what, I just need to know more about the character, and that's when I started diving into comics, and just started looking around to see what I could get, and it was Moon Knight, so it was really hard to find some certain things and try to get the source material, but over time, just became one of my all-time favorite characters, and here we are, years later.
You finally get him on the screen now.
Finally have him on the screen.
I know what that felt like.
I was gonna say
2015. I know what that felt like.
You had that experience with BP.
Yes, I did.
You had that experience.
I did.
So,
I think I cried the first time I saw him on the trailer.
Oh, man, do you know how many times I've watched that trailer?
Yeah. Oh wow. I know. I could imagine.
It was mind blowing, and to see something you've only read in pages and only seen in still form for the longest time. I mean, granted, he's been in a couple of video games here and there, which was fun to play a few times, but unfortunately those games have been canceled. It almost felt the same way every time I would go get a Moon Knight comic and be super excited. I'm like, oh, it's the next issue in the run, and I'd get the comic book pool, and unfortunately the comic book store would tell me, hey, we didn't sell enough issues, and Moon Knight's going to get, it's going to get discontinued again. So for something that's always been kind of underground to finally be at the forefront, it's just great. As a fan, it just brings, I mean, look at the smile. Absolute joy to my heart, man.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Do you think that they're going to do the character justice?
From what I could see, I want to say yes, 110%.
Okay.
And I hope so. Now, it's hard to tell, right? We never know until something is done and something's fully fleshed out. But they haven't done us wrong yet.
Yeah.
From what I've seen in the trailer, and I know you and I have discussed it, and we're about to get into it a little bit here, the little Easter eggs, the nods that we're already seeing.
A lot of nuggets.
I mean, this character is a complex character.
Very complex.
Should we get into a little bit?
Let's dive into it. Before we get going, do you think that the new fans are going to appreciate it, or do you think they will not understand it?
So it's a good question, because I've had a couple friends ask me, because they know I love Moon Knight, and I've rocked this hoodie for quite some time now. They're like, okay, you gotta give me a little backstory of who this character is, because I'm not really understanding. He looks cool. I know Oscar Isaac's a great actor, and I've seen some other great actors in this, and I like MCU shows, but I'm not sure what's really happening.
Yeah.
I think they will appreciate it if they give it the time it's necessary for it to unravel.
Good. Okay.
And the reason I say that is I feel like we're about to get into a crazy ride similar to WandaVision.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
We're going to be riding along with a character that has dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah.
So with that, there's going to be a lot of personalities, disjointed frames. Even from the trailer, we already can see it jumps around a lot. You're not really sure what's happening at all times. You're not sure if even the main character at the time is who he is or which version of himself. You're trying to almost decipher what's happening with him as he's trying to decipher it. And I think that's going to be a really enjoyable ride for people who are willing to go along with that ride. I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as some of the other shows we've seen. I don't think it's
not going to be a Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Correct.
It's not going to be.
It's not going to be Hawkeye. Right.
Yeah.
It's not going to be that. It's going to be WandaVision. It's going to be Loki. It's going to be more along the lines of
trying to understand, trying to figure out what's happening.
I'm going to have to sit here. I'm going to have to put these context pieces together. I'm going to have to decipher who this character is, what he's going through, which version of the character are we seeing, and we're probably not going to get a final payout. I'm thinking, and I'm actually hoping for this because I don't think you're going to get a real Moon Knight show unless you get the craziness kind of just pieced together and all slammed together, maybe until the final episode or some of the final episodes.
Or the third act of the final episode.
Right. So I'm thinking the first, I'm going to say 2-3 episodes.
It's going to lose some folks.
It's going to lose some folks.
Yeah.
And I'm a little scared of that in a way because I think this character, if given the right time and given the right respect, and if you're willing to invest that time into it, you're going to love this character just because of the depth. And right out of the gate, I'm just going to shut this down. He is not Marvel's Batman.
He's not.
I've seen it everywhere on social media. I've seen it on every Marvel post you can think of for Moon Knight. They're like, oh, it's just Marvel's Batman.
No, it's not.
It's not. It really is not. Like, granted, cool. They wear capes. Got it. They fight crime at night. Cool. Do you know how many other characters do the same thing?
A lot.
Do we want to get into that? No. But give it the time. Give it the respect it's due. And I'm telling you, the MCU's not going to do you wrong.
I honestly feel like this character is a way more complex character than Batman.
Yes.
On many different levels.
Oh, yeah.
On a psychological level.
Yeah.
Mental level, physical level,
yep.
even. And this character, he don't have the barrier of an oath.
No.
That he's dealing with.
No.
And trying to hold up,
No, there is not a line that Mark Spector, which is going to be the main identity that associates with Moon Knight. Granted, there is also Jake Lockley.
Mm-hmm.
We also have Stephen Grant.
Yeah.
And let's see if you know the other one.
Grant is a billionaire.
Okay. So these are going off the comics, just to give you reference, because
comics.
they're probably going to be, and we're already seeing this in the trailer a little bit differently. So Stephen Grant is a billionaire identity, so that's also why people think there's a comparison to Bruce Wayne. So we're, again, ignoring
that. But in the trailer, he's working in the museum.
He's working in the museum already. Guy. Yeah, he's already a different
There's
guy.
Grant.
Stephen Grant. Or not Stephen Grant. Yeah.
Grant is a cab driver? No. The cab driver is...
Jake Lockley. And in the comics, as a reference, that's when he's actually trying to get information. He goes into like a street level identity.
Yeah.
And he gets whatever information he needs to do to pretty much take care of what needs to be done as far as getting he's fighting a certain, we're just gonna say bad guys or villain. Mm-hmm. That's how he gets the clues and whatever he's got to put together to fight
and then
that.
there's Grant. Where does Grant work? Do we call Grant? No, we call Lockley. See, I'm already tripping in my mind. I'm so tripping in my mind.
So we got Stephen Grant.
We got Grant.
Millionaire.
We have
Jake Lockley.
Uh-huh.
And the third one?
The third one is Grant.
Mark Spector.
Spectre.
Yeah.
There's a fourth.
It's Moon Knight. There's not a fourth. It was a trick question. Those are the three.
The three, and then Mark Spector.
Yeah.
So the trailer opens with the three reflections.
So Mark Spector is the one where we're going to respect spoilers. I don't really want to go into the full backstory of Mark Spector.
Yeah.
Because we talked about...
I don't even think we get that character in the trailer that we've seen so far.
I think the only time you see Mark Spector, and if you know Mark Spector from the comics, you will understand this reference. I think the only time we see him, and I think we see him...
When the guys are laying around him?
Obviously, when he's in the full Moon Knight getup.
Okay.
And he is Moon Knight, right?
Okay.
I think that's when you see him, because Mark Spector, when he is Mark Spector, is when he's Moon Knight. That's the closest I would say he associates as far as 1-to-1 there.
Yeah.
But also, I think he's coming out of his Mark Spector form in the trailer when he's holding the gun. Not realizing, why am I holding a gun?
Yeah.
And you see the next shot, there's a guy
Somebody
falling out of the trailer.
Yeah.
He's covered in blood, and he's just like, why am I holding a gun? What is going on?
So you think that's either Lockley or Grant that's doing that?
I think at that point, he's coming out of Lockley or Grant, or excuse me, he's coming out of
Spectre
into
Lockley or Grant.
Or Grant, having a Spectre moment and starting to gather one of, obviously he has all three of those identities, but he's starting to gather that, I have this other past I'm not familiar with, and I happen to be very good with weapons, a marksman of some nature. I'm not going to say anything else. Again, those of you who know.
You know, yeah.
And I think that's the one time that you get a nod, because what's interesting in the trailer, he's not Mark Spector.
No.
And they actually even allude to it when he gets the phone
call. And
like,
she calls him Mark.
Mark, and he's like,
who's Mark?
Who's Mark?
Yeah.
Because the entire time we're seeing him in his British identity as, which is not the millionaire version, or billionaire, I should say, but he's Stephen Grant.
Yeah.
And he's Stephen Grant, and it looks like he's taking on the identity of a shopkeeper,
museum curator, maybe?
It's either he works, I don't know, because he was putting on the name tag. It looks like he was going to work in like the gift shop, right, of the museum, or maybe he's a museum curator. It doesn't seem like he's high up in the totem pole.
A museum tour guide.
Tour guide, maybe, even because it kind of seems he's there after hours. So maybe he's just like a security guard. I don't think he has a high up level in this museum, right? Because like he's like, oh, sorry, and like he's like answering to other people. He's not ordering people around. He's like a very bumbling, very humble
guy,
kind of shy background character, which is a very interesting take and completely different from the comics.
Yeah.
Because that's where that identity in the comics is a billionaire.
He's confident,
suave. He throws his money around, and he knows what he needs to do to get something done when he's Stephen Grant. So that right there is already one split from the comics.
And this is why it's so trippy, right?
Yeah.
I think another scene we see, he is like popping up in the bed. There's all these locks, or we see him lock the door, put tape on the door, set certain combinations, put sand around the bed so you can see if somebody's going out or coming in. So there's all these different things, and you struggle. Like, I think it's gonna make us, the audience, struggle as well, right? Because we're gonna be trying to figure out like which character is this, what is happening at this time.
Well, even in that trailer, and that's a nice note that you pointed out, when he puts the tape on the door, like, that's not really that hard to break through, right? So what is he fearing that he's going to either change into, or that's going to come through the door, where he knows that tape is either going to be enough to deter it or not going to be able to deal with it? Or is it just a signifier of like, oh, something came through that night? And then the sand's really interesting, because we've seen that used in like movies like Paranormal Activity.
Sometimes they do salt
or something along those lines, to see if something of otherworldly has stepped through. And in that scene, and this is because I've watched the trailer too many times, there's a book if when he stumbles out, if you look at it and you pause it, there's a book at the edge of the bed. I'm trying to remember the title. It's something. It's like along the lines of like finding yourself in parallel worlds or something along those lines.
Yeah,
so he's already reading material and finding out how to deal with himself. I think it's like finding your soul in a parallel world or something like that. Here he's understanding like, I'm having issues, and they're not issues of just this world, they're issues of another world. So he's already trying to figure out what's happening to him. And what's really cool to me, now that we've identified and told the viewers about the fact he's got those 3 identities, is in the trailer there's so many nods to the threes. Like right out of the gate when he pops up in the bed,
he turns around,
he turns and you
3
see
reflections,
3 reflections,
and
he's looking
back.
he's looking back, terrified at something else, and it's like, okay, so those are the 3, right? Is that there's Steven, there's Jake, and then there's Mark. Is he looking at Moon Knight? Is he looking at Khonshu? Like, and we'll get into Khonshu.
A.P.A.C.
A podcast about comics. A podcast about comics.